The morning started no differently than countless others. Still, an unshakable weight lingered, pressing on my chest in a way I couldn't dismiss. I had been aware of the reality for a long time, weeks, perhaps longer. The mismatched details, the quiet calls taken out of earshot, the evenings that stretched late with explanations that never quite aligned. Caroline believed she had concealed her infidelity. She trusted in her own cleverness, convinced she was beyond suspicion, convinced I would never see through the act. What she didn't realize was that I had been watching in silence. I noted every pattern, saved every detail, and observed her behavior without reaction. I kept my demeanor steady, hiding nothing but revealing even less. I wasn't furious. I wasn't frantic. I was deliberate. I allowed the tension to grow, waited for the precise moment when restraint would speak louder than rage. As she stepped into the room, self-assured, relaxed, completely unaware, I understood the moment had arrived. A truth was about to surface, one she never imagined would come from me. Then she asked it, the question I had been expecting all along. Her voice quivered, laced with uncertainty, fear, and a fragile trace of hope. "Why don't you want me anymore?" Her eyes searched mine, desperate for familiarity, for comfort, for the reassurance she assumed still existed. They were still. Something inside me, but it no longer belonged to who I once was. I caught the brief flash of alarm in her eyes, the subtle facial shifts that betrayed her growing realization. The confidence she had worn so easily, the same confidence that made betrayal effortless, began to fracture. I knew then that composure would wound far deeper than anger ever could. I smiled. It wasn't cruel or mocking. It was slow, controlled, and steady, a quiet confirmation that I had regained power. "Because what belonged to me, you already gave to someone else," I said, choosing each word carefully, letting the truth settle with its full weight. Her reaction was immediate. Her expression froze, confusion flickering first, then disbelief, followed by panic she couldn't suppress. In that instant, she understood everything. My calm wasn't ignorance. My patience wasn't weakness. It was awareness. It was restraint. For a suspended second, she seemed unable to breathe or speak, unable even to blink fast enough to escape the truth she had walked into. When she finally spoke, her voice barely carried sound. I never meant for it to happen," she murmured, trembling as she searched for justification, for a way to reverse time and erase the damage. I answered with silence. That silence carried more authority than any argument ever could. I didn't need to explain how I knew. I didn't need to defend myself. The truth was written in my posture, my expression, the certainty of someone who no longer required her presence to feel whole. Each excuse she offered dissolved the moment. It left her mouth, collapsing against the immovable resolve I held. She studied my face, hoping to find doubt, hesitation, anything she could exploit once more. She found nothing. My stare remained firm, reflecting clarity rather than pain, strength rather than fracture. The space between us felt smaller as her confidence completely unraveled. The woman who once maneuvered effortlessly through deception now shook under the weight of exposure. Every belief she clung to that she could explain this away, that forgiveness was inevitable, fell apart in that calm exchange. Time stretched as panic set in. Eventually, she lowered herself into a chair, hands unsteady, drained by the collision between her recklessness and my restraint. She had misjudged the power of patience, the danger of quiet observation, and the force of controlled truth. With every failed attempt to justify herself, reality pressed closer. What she had given away, my trust, my loyalty, my heart, was gone permanently, and she could feel that loss settle in. Her apologies followed, fragile and subdued, sincere in a way she rarely allowed herself to be. She tried to explain, to reason, to soften the betrayal with words, but they carried no substance. The damage was irreversible. The lesson had already landed, undeniable in its simplicity. She had crossed a line, miscalculated, and now stood, exposed before the consequences of her choices. Every subtle shake, every strained breath, every hesitant movement reminded her that what she had broken could not be repaired. By the night's end, she was quiet, subdued, fully aware that what we once had was beyond recovery. My calm had been the blow that shattered her assumptions and left her humbled. She learned that giving away something sacred creates a void that cannot be filled, and that a man who values what is his cannot be swayed by charm, excuses, or hope. The truth settled deeply, and it would remain with her. I walked away from that conversation carrying only a sense of closure. I hadn't raised my voice. I hadn't argued. I hadn't pursued anything further. The composed delivery of truth had proven stronger than confrontation, more enduring than pleading, and far more fulfilling than revenge. She faced the outcome of her decisions. I preserved my dignity. As the night faded, her presence lingered like a shadow of regret, but I felt no pull toward it. The message had been delivered. The lesson had been absorbed. My restraint had spoken, louder than any dramatic display ever could. She had underestimated me, and she would never make that mistake again. In that realization, I found a quiet satisfaction that followed me through the night and far beyond.